Hello there, people. Hello, Leute, and welcome to this German GCSE and iGCSE video tutorial. So in this particular tutorial, we're going to look at the reading exam, and I'm going to take you through some general tips for how to approach the reading exam, how to maximize your marks, and to get the best that you possibly can from this reading exam for all exam boards. Make sure to carry on watching, as this should be very valuable for all students. Just firstly, my name's Dan Anjay Talwar, and I studied French and Italian, modern languages, for my MA degree at the University of Cambridge. I graduated in 2015, and I've been a full time tutor mostly since then, an educator in some form since that time. I'm really passionate about languages and language learning, as I'm sure you'll be able to tell. And I have learned more than 20 languages to different levels, which include at least 9 to fluency, so one of which is German. And I really enjoy and love motivating my students, making sure they know efficient ways to learn languages that are also really fun, because that is possible too. They know how to reach their ultimate goals and their target grades. And I've been lucky to help over 500 different students already to achieve or even exceed their target grade in GCSE or iGCSE language exams as a full-time tutor. I have taught about 8 languages so far to GCSE and iGCSE level, and some of those at higher levels too, which has been very enjoyable. Okay, these here are the German GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. So 4 of them as of September 2025 for GCSE German, and a few for iGCSE German. The vast majority of students will be following one of these, and I recommend getting to know which one of those you are taking as early as you can, ideally. But this video should be relevant for all students, regardless of their particular exam board, because we're looking at more general or overall reading exam tips and how all students really should approach the reading exam. There are differences, of course, from exam board to exam board. Pearson edXL iGCSE, for instance, still has a combined reading and writing paper, which is unusual in that respect. There's still considerable overlap as well in terms of topic areas and more. And before I give you some vital tips on how you can maximize your grades in the reading exam and get as many marks as possible, I thought I'd just recap the different question types that could potentially come up in your reading exam. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list of every single question type that anybody could possibly ever face. These are the most common ones, and these ones altogether are very likely to make up the lion's share, the vast majority of the questions that you will have in your paper. Most of the questions will be one of these types. You don't hesitate to prepare other types of questions if you find them, and be aware that, you could come across something new as well, which has not come up before in a past paper. But these question types, the most common ones, include gap fill questions, multiple choice questions, questions where you've got to answer true, false, or not mentioned, questions where you have to identify the correct statements, questions which ask you to answer in English, questions where you must answer in German, and translation. And if translation is part of your reading paper, which is the case for German GCSE students, so anyone doing a GCSE exam board rather than iGCSE, then the translation that comes up in the reading paper will be translation from German to English rather than the other way around, German to English, which does tend to be somewhat easier for students, for sure. I cover all of these first 6 question types, all the way from gap fill questions down to questions where you've got to answer in German in another video. So one separate video that I've done, which basically takes you through all of these most common reading exam question types one by one individually and gives you the techniques that you should implement to answer every single one of those. So that should be very useful for all students again, and I really recommend watching that one too. And I do have another video out, which is specifically on translation. So how to translate both from German to English and English to German. Both of those directions for translation are covered in that video. So again, if translation is relevant for your exams, definitely give that a watch as well. In this video, though, we are looking at the reading exam as a whole, and I'm going to give you some tips, going to take you through the format of it, what it consists of, and how you can score those precious marks. So the German GCSE or iGCSE reading exam will, of course, be a timed written paper. Questions will often be multiple choice. Multiple choice type questions are arguably the most common out of those types that we just saw, or they may require short written answers. If they do require short written answers, those could be in English or in German. And be aware that those should definitely be short answers. In the reading paper, you will not be required to write substantial answers in English or German. Those answers should be a sentence or even less than that. It could be a few words, or a phrase. You're not required to answer in full sentences generally when answering in English or German either. Questions will, of course, be based on text. Every single question will have a different text to read. So make sure to read that text first at least once. And the student can read through each text as many times as they want or need. That is an important detail because it's different specifically to the listening exam. In the listening exam, you'd hear everything twice, generally, mostly. In the reading exam, the only limit is your time. So if you have time, you could potentially go over the same text 5 or 6 times if you really wanted to, and if you had to, provided that you do have the time available to do that, which not many students would actually have. It is important, definitely, to time yourself, to pace yourself as you go through the paper as well, and to make sure that you finish as many questions as possible, if not all of them. Ideally, you should finish all of them and give yourself enough time, at least 5 minutes, for checking through all the answers, everything that you've written down as well, just to check for small mistakes, things like spelling, grammar, punctuation, and so on. Okay, so here come my top tips for the reading exam. Read through the instructions for each question thoroughly. That's always the first thing to do. Every time you open up to a new question, the first thing you should do is read over the instructions for that question and read through them carefully too. The aim is very much not just to read them, but to understand exactly what is required, because no matter how good you are as a student, many students, even the top ones, can make smaller, sillier mistakes just by not following the instructions very carefully. They may not answer the question directly, for example. Familiarize yourself with the technique that is needed for each of the question types. The other video that I've done on that should be really, really useful for that too, should very much help. Different question types require different techniques. They're not all the same. So don't discriminate against those question types by assuming they're all the same. Do watch that other video on these techniques and make sure that once you understand the techniques, you then practice implementing them too. So it starts to become second nature. Learn topic-specific vocabulary. I often come across students that are tempted to just skip revising vocabulary for certain harder topics, perhaps, and just gamble on certain ones coming up. I definitely don't recommend that. Try and learn vocab for all of the topic areas, because you don't know which ones will come up in your exams. And resources like Quizlet, but also many others, can be useful for that too. And exam technique makes a big difference, such a big difference, in fact, that I've put in capitals here, because it's definitely not something to underestimate. And that's why these videos are also there, to give you the required exam technique to help you to reach those target grades. The best candidates are not necessarily the ones that speak or know German the best. Not necessarily. I think if you're a native speaker or close to that, that does help, though, of course. But exam technique can really make a big difference in terms of students' grades for language GCSE exams. And that is the case for the reading paper too. So a few more tips here. Time management is really important. As mentioned, as a student, as you're doing the reading paper, you should be aware of the time and remember to check the time periodically as well. You don't have to do so constantly, because that would distract too much from answering the actual questions. But you do have to do so from time to time, just to make sure that you're on track, and to be aware of whether you need to speed up or whether you can actually take your time and even afford to slow down, if possible too. Time management is really important then, and something that I would definitely practice as well. You should aim to finish all the questions without leaving any out, and to have enough time, at least 5 minutes, to check. Practice in exam conditions, that's usually the best way to practice without being able to look up any words or anything. And in timed conditions too, just as it would be in the actual exam. And practice using past paper materials. Feel free to tailor those to your particular exam board. The website of your exam board should be a very useful place to find such materials. And if you're struggling to find any, you can get in touch with me too. Um, yeah, but using materials that are going to be as close as possible to your final exams, yeah, of course, is going to be the most beneficial, especially as you get closer and closer to those exams. Perhaps within a month or two from the actual exams, I'd really prioritize using past papers, yeah, for revision. Okay, in terms of that exam technique, which I've talked about a lot already, here are some pointers for what to do and some key elements of exam technique that actually students can make mistakes with. So, firstly, make sure you read each question and the possible answers to fully. That's always the first thing to do for every new question you go through. And I would always read through the question's instructions first, thoroughly, then go through the text itself fully, at least once. And then, if there are questions and certain options to choose from as well, I'd make sure to read through those next fully as well. Make sure that you understand each question, what each question's asking for, and all of the potential answers you have to choose from. And then I would go back to the text and try to identify which of those is the correct, which of those are correct based on the information in the text and so on. Check your work thoroughly after completing the question. So I'd actually try and check my work twice. I would, just after completing each question, I'd go back and have a quick look, nothing more than a brief look, to check that I hadn't made any silly mistakes and that I did follow the instructions for that question correctly. And once I'd finished every question in the paper as well, I'd, ideally, assuming I've got enough time for it, aim to give yourself at least 5 minutes to do this. I would check through everything that I've written down, checking for things like spelling, punctuation, and grammar, or SPAG, making sure that I've indicated which questions I'm answering. I haven't made any small or silly mistakes. I followed the questions instructions and so on. If you do find questions particularly difficult, I recommend putting a symbol, say a star, for example, next to them. And those are just a sign to yourself to come back to those first when you're checking. That makes sure that your checking time is used as efficiently as possible. As mentioned, try and make sure you've got some idea of how much time has gone in the exam and how much time is left. How much time is left. And then ideally, you should know how to pace yourself. You should have some idea of how much time is left in the exam and also how many questions are left. So whether you'll be able to finish in time and implement that all-important checking time as well. Check how many marks are available for every question. This exam technique does make a considerable difference. The number of marks is there to guide you as well. Normally, you have to give the same number of details as the number of marks that are available for that question. You always answer in the same language that the question is written in. There shouldn't really be any doubt about which language you have to use, because that should be indicated very clearly in your exam paper. But if you have any doubt whatsoever, just follow that rule. And lastly, but certainly not least, do not leave any question blank. This is particularly true for multiple choice questions. That is a very frustrating way to lose marks. There's no harm in having a go as well, particularly for multiple choice questions, because even if you're absolutely stumped and you've got no clue what the answer is, even if you take a random guess, especially with multiple choice questions, you've still got some decent chance of guessing it correctly. So don't hesitate to have a go, even if it feels like you're just, having a stabbing in the dark, basically. Okay, a few more common errors that students make in a German GCSE and iGCSE reading exam. So these are some more things to watch out for. Don't fall into the trap of writing down the first answer option that you come across. It's really common to come across trick questions in both reading and in listening papers. So be aware of that. They will often mention all of the options in turn. Don't just write down the first one that you come across. You have to pay attention to the details too, both in reading and in listening. And that can take some practice. Falling for trick questions in general. Yeah, another common thing that they do is use synonyms. Um, so they may not give the exact answer as it's written in the options that you have. They may use a synonym or express it in a different way instead. So if you don't come across the exact words that are written down on your question paper in the answer options, don't feel that that necessarily means that that isn't the right answer. It could be expressed differently instead. False friends are also common. These are words that look to be very similar to an English word, but actually have a completely different meaning. Like the German word gift, for example, is a very famous example. Actually, the word gift in German doesn't mean a gift, it means poison. So try not to fall into the trap of, mistaking these false friends and thinking that they are exactly the same, have the same meanings in German and English. Misunderstanding negatives. A negative can completely change or can reverse the meaning of a sentence. So watch out for those, particularly, say, when you've got limited options to choose from and there's a negative in a statement. Pay attention to that, make sure to not miss that. Not answering the question's exact requirements too. That's why it's so important to read the instructions for every single question that you do. Don't be tempted to skip over that. Do take your time to read through the question's instructions carefully and understand what you have to do to get the marks. It's very common for even top students to miss out on marks because they give an answer that isn't necessarily entirely relevant to what the question is asking for. Okay. Another thing that often comes up for the German GCSE or iGCSE reading paper is coming across unfamiliar words. For AQA and Pearson at Excel GCSE, actually, if you're a student doing one of those two exam boards for their papers from 2026 onwards, they will have defined vocab lists that you can use to revise from. And you shouldn't really come across words or very few words outside of that defined vocab list. But that's only true for those two exam boards. For the other students doing any of the other exam boards, unfortunately, you may well come across unfamiliar words. And that can really flummox students. So I'm here to show you what you should do when you come across unfamiliar words in a reading text in your reading paper. So firstly, you can see if there are other German words hidden inside that unknown word, which you already do know. So, for example, Apfelbaum contains the word Apfel. Apfel, you probably don't need to know German to be able to figure that out, means apple. And you can use that to help you, especially with the context there as an aid as well, to help you to work out that Apfelbaum means an apple tree. So even if you're unsure what Apfelbaum is, if you know what the word Apfel is, that can really help you to get the meaning. Context is also key as well. That can also really help to decipher the meaning of some unknown word. This is especially true with German, actually, because German uses so many different compound words, and there is definitely some overlap between German and English vocabulary. English is also a Germanic language, actually, so from the same family, same language family as German and other languages, say Dutch, Flemish, Scandinavian, Nordic languages, and so on, which can help as well. You do have similarities in vocab, like words like hand, which means hand, amazingly, arm, and so on. You can also see if the word is similar to any other German words that you do know. For example, if you're not sure what Erkältung is, Erkältung actually means cold, as in an illness, to have a cold, for example. If you're not sure what that word means, you might well recognize the word kalt, or see that it looks similar to the word kalt, which is the adjective for cold, as in cold in temperature, for example. And that can help you to work out that Erkältung is something to do with being cold, or even, in fact, you might work out that it is to have a cold, as in the illness. So that's the next thing to do. And lastly, you could see if the word is similar to any other English words that you do know, or potentially words in other languages too. If you know Dutch, that could definitely help too, for instance. So, for example, Schule, the German word, looks very, very similar to school in English. And that is, in fact, what it means. There are going to be quite a few German words that are not too dissimilar to their English equivalents. So use that all to help you as well. I would go through these techniques strategies one by one if you're confronted with any unknown words in your text. Okay, now I'm just going to take this opportunity to test your understanding and knowledge of the German GCSE or iGCSE reading paper. Question number 1 of 4. What is the first thing to do or to read through whenever you start a new question in the reading exam? That might seem fairly self-explanatory, but yeah, we're going to go through this anyway. And I'll give you a few seconds to think of the answer. Okay, this should already be likely enough time. So the answer here is the first thing to do is, of course, read over all the instructions and make sure to understand them fully. It's vital that you know exactly what you've got to do to score the marks and how many marks that question is for too. Question number 2, this one's true or false. You should always answer questions in the reading paper in the same language that the question itself is written in. Is that one true or false? Something that I would have mentioned earlier, but try and remember it. Okay, now let me show the answer. This is true. The question paper should, of course, also make it clear which language you need to use. But if you're in any doubt, then don't hesitate to follow that rule as well. Question 3, so true or false again. If you don't understand a German word that you come across in a text, you should just completely ignore it and move on. Again, let me give a few seconds to think over this. Okay, and here comes the answer. This is actually false. If that particular word could be important or seems like it is important, then there are a few techniques, as I showed you just now, to try and work out the meaning of the unknown word. The context is also key. That can also really help. You may not need to implement strategies if the context makes it quite clear to you what that word is likely to mean. Of course, if it's not important or relevant to one of the answers, then you could just skip over the word and ignore it to some extent. And lastly, question 4. Why is it important exactly to check the number of marks available for every question on the reading exam? Okay, now let me reveal the answer to that. This is because it usually acts as a guide as to how much information or how many details you need to give to score those marks. So if a question's worth 2 marks, that would usually mean you have to give 2 different bits of information or 2 different details and so on. Okay, so if you have any questions regarding anything there, or if you'd like to know more about more personalized help, which I can provide as well, you can get in touch through email, by Facebook, or Instagram. I post every day on social media platforms, sharing my love of languages and my passion with the world, of course, hopefully inspiring more and more people to learn languages and giving them the tools to do so, explaining why it can be so beneficial, how it's easier than many people think, and how there are many methods that can be both efficient but also really enjoyable. And I do post on GCSE and iGCSE language papers too, how to maximize your grades, how to revise, and more. So don't hesitate to follow me on those platforms. I do have many resources available, including free ones for GCSE and iGCSE languages. That includes German, of course. And I do one-to-one classes, group classes, courses, and plenty more. So don't hesitate to reach out to me at all if you'd like more info on any of that.